Hi everyone, welcome to episode 33 of the Willow Cove Crafts podcast, a podcast about knitting and sewing and my other crafty endeavors. My name is Emily, and you can find me on both Ravelry and Instagram as Willow Cove Crafts. Today is Sunday, August 7th, 2022, and I am coming to you from just outside of Madison in Verona, Wisconsin. It has been 3 weeks since I last recorded. I am coming to you a week late because last weekend I was in Boston visiting my friend Hillary. I had a really great trip. It's always nice to see her. We did a lot of eating and drinking and, putzing about the city. And yeah, it was really nice to see her. I can't believe it's August already. This summer is going by super fast. I will say I am looking forward to the end of August because Dan and I have a big trip coming up. We are going to France in just under 3 weeks, and we've been doing a lot of planning over the last couple weeks, and it's becoming more real and, making, specific plans about what we're going to do each day and all the different things we want to try to see while we're there, and, making reservations at restaurants we really want to try. And I am just really looking forward to it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That'll be coming in the next month or so. But, yes, I have a lot to show you today. I feel like I've gotten a lot of knitting done in the last 3 weeks. It helped that I had, I went to Boston and I had some vacation time, and so I was off of work. I still felt like we were pretty busy and active while we were in Boston, but I still got a lot of knitting done. And then, I've just been knitting like crazy in the evenings, and I feel like I have a lot to show you today. I have one finished object, and I have 3 knitting works in progress, one that you've seen before, 2 that are brand new, and then I have one sewing project to share with you today. So there's a lot going on over here. So let's get started. So as I mentioned, I have one finished object today. This was almost finished during my last episode. I think I just had the cuffs on both of the sleeves to knit, or somewhere close to that. But I have finished my Sunday sweater by PetiteKnit. And it is so hot today, which is why I'm not wearing this, but I will insert a little bit of video here showing me wearing it. I do think this sweater turned out a little bit bigger than I anticipated. It is quite long, which is surprising. So I knit this to pattern, and I knit it to the length that the pattern called for. And typically I have to lengthen things. I am quite tall, so I often have to add a little bit of length to my sweaters. I didn't do that with this one. I just knit it completely to pattern, and it's really long on me. So I do wonder how it is on a more averaged height person. But I do think it does look really good tucked into high-waisted pants. I think when you tuck it in, the top, or excuse me, the bottom of the sweater just kind of like flounces over, and it mimics the balloon sleeve. So yes, details about this. So I did knit the 2XL size. I do think I could have sized down, and I hear people say that about PetiteKnit patterns a lot. She tends to incorporate a lot of positive ease into her recommended sizes, and I think it's just a little too much for my taste. I think I could have sized down on this sweater and still had an oversized sweater. So I have a 44 inch bust, and I made the 2XL per the sizing recommendations, and there's a lot of ease. I'm just gonna put this on so you can see it. But I think you can tell, you know, there's just a lot of ease. It looks great. I'm really happy with it, but I do think I could have sized down. It's definitely a very big, cozy, oversized sweater. The yarn I used, I barely have any left. So I used 2 yarns held double. The first is Drops Air, and this is in color 34, which I think I may have misspoken about the name before. It's either Pink Marble or Pink Sand, pink something. And this is what I have left. I used 7 balls of this, and this was my last ball. This is a bulky weight, I believe. And let me tell you the fiber content. Sorry, I feel all over the place today. I hope that's not bothering anyone. It's 65% alpaca, 28% polyamide, 7% wool, and one more time I'll show this. The Drops Air is a chained construction yarn, so I believe the polyamide is what makes that kind of chainette structure, and then the other fibers get blown into the chain. So that was my first yarn, and then I held it double with Drops Kid Silk. Here's the tag for that. And this is color 20, which I believe is called Light Beige. And it is 75% mohair, 25% silk. I used 5 balls of this, and I actually ran out. So, yes, I mentioned last episode that I was really worried that I was gonna run out of mohair, and that I had weighed it, and everything looked like it was going to work out. And I don't know what happened. The math lied to me. I don't know if because mohair is so light, the scale was just a little off in its weight measurement, but I did run out of mohair on the second sleeve cuff. I literally had, I think, 4 or 5 more rows to knit on my second sleeve. So I just barely ran out. And I didn't want to rip back. So what I decided to do, I was like, I'm just gonna try this out and see what I think. And I can always rip out later if it ends up bothering me or I notice it. But I just kept knitting. I ran out of mohair, and you know, the Drops Air, they were similar colors, and the Drops Air is so fluffy in and of itself that I was like, is it gonna be super noticeable if I don't knit the last few rows of this sweater with mohair? And I don't think it's super noticeable. So here are my 2 sleeves. And again, I ran out, I think it was this one. Was it this one? I actually have a hard time telling sometimes. It's actually this one. So my left arm. But I ran out of mohair and I just knit until I had used up all of it. And then I did the last couple rows without the mohair. So I think you can maybe like kind of tell there's a bit of like a color shift right around here. But overall, I don't think you're ever gonna notice. Sitting here like looking at my sleeves, I mean, you just saw, I have to look really closely to figure out which one is which. The gauge is a little off on this sleeve. Like I can tell, like that's one of the big identifiers for me, is that I can tell that those stitches just look a little bit smaller. So yes, the impact on the overall sweater to not hold the mohair would have changed the gauge, I think, pretty drastically, but just on those last few rows, I didn't hold the mohair. And I think it's fine. I really lucked out. I do think sometimes when you hold a mohair with another yarn, the whole color of the sweater changes. But luckily, these two were very similarly colored, and I don't think you can really tell. Also, the sleeves are very baggy, and so if I'm wearing this and my arms are down, you can't even see the cuffs anyways. So, yes. What else to say about my Sunday sweater? Yeah, if I knit this again, which I don't tend to knit sweaters twice, I will definitely size down. It's just, I don't know how to show this to you. Here, let me try standing up. But there's just a lot of ease. It's big and cozy, and it almost, you can't quite see in the video, but it almost covers my whole butt. Like, it's long. So yes, I would knit a smaller size. I would probably shorten the length. But all in all, again, tucked in, I think it looks really cute. And now the weather just needs to cool off, which here in Wisconsin, September is still pretty warm. And then towards the end of September, I would say, is when we typically start to get cooler weather. So we'll see. There are sometimes very hot days, even into October here. Yeah, the fall in Wisconsin is just a great big mystery. You never know what's gonna happen. So I get distracted. I get so many birds on my porch, and there's a dove that comes and sits. I like to think it's the same bird every time. And he just landed on my porch. I also don't know if it's a he. I'm assuming. I like the birds. Anyways, that is my finished sweater. All right, let's move along into works in progress. Like I mentioned, I have 3 knitting works in progress, one of which you've seen before if you are a returning viewer. So I will start with that one. Yes, it's been 3 weeks since I recorded. I worked mostly monogamously on during the first week since my last episode, and then this one has kind of been put on hold a little bit, which I will talk about in a second. But I put some work into my Moonset tee by Ozetta, and this thing is like kind of hard to show. It's got an interesting construction, and so at the moment it just looks kind of weird. Like, here it is. But since last time, I believe I have a marker here. This is where I was last episode. And I've since knit to finish. How this works is you knit starting with the back. And so this is the neckline, and then you knit a polygon of some sort. I don't know. But you kind of make this angled edge, and then this ends up being straight. So these are your shoulder seams, and then you end up picking up along the shoulder seam to knit the fronts. So I am on the left front, so then this, you know, will end up sitting like this. This will get joined, this like kind of weird collar piece, but this will end up kind of sitting like that. And then obviously you'll have the other side done as well. So yes, the yarn I'm using, sorry, I'm so scattered today. I don't know what's going on, but I am using Ampersand fibers, which is a fingering weight 100% US Corriedale, and this is the color Oat 01. And I mentioned last time that I was really interested to try, you know, I've been really into summer knits this year. I historically have not been interested in them at all, and then I don't know what happened, but this year I've been seeing a lot of really beautiful t-shirts and tank tops, and I wanted to try. And I wanted to start by trying knitting one out of wool to see how wool responds to the heat, because I have heard people say that wool, despite its reputation as being a cold weather fiber, is actually really good at keeping you cool. So, yes. However, I don't actually know if I'm gonna finish this before summer is over, but I might have it around next summer. Yeah, what else to say about this? I mentioned this is the Moonset Tee by Ozetta. I really, really like this pattern. It's pretty simple in that, you know, it's all over stockinette, but it's got some really like great clean details. So like, for example, the collar or the band, it is a V-neck t-shirt, and so, you know, this, you know, is angling down to make a V, but I just think this edging is so neat and tidy, and, you know, it's just got, it's been a while since I've worked on this. I think this is an I-cord, but just the way the I-cord kind of blends into the ribbed edging, and then it just sits so nicely, and, you know, the shoulder seams look great. Like, everything about it is so clean and precise and intentional, and I just love it. Yes, I could go on and on. Yeah, I'm a really big fan of this pattern, and a lot of Ozetta's other patterns kind of fall into that same bucket of like kind of more basic, but like the details are just spot on perfect, and I am really looking forward to making some more of her patterns in the future. So yes, that is the Moonset Tee. I am making the size, I should have looked this up. I want to start talking about sizing more because people don't, and I'm always very interested, like finding other people who look like me and then seeing what size they're making and how it's fitting them. I think that's really helpful. Oh, what size am I making? I have no idea. I will try to remember next time to let you know what size I am making for everything. I just would have to go look this one up. But yes, probably the extra large size if I had to guess. But I don't remember how the sizing works in that pattern, if it's, you know, small, medium, large, or if it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Anyways, if you are curious about what size I'm making ever, just please ask me and I will be happy to tell you. But I will try and say it in the video. Yes. I don't think I have anything else to say about this one. So again, the next two projects I'm going to show you are definitely going to be my priority over the next few weeks. They are on a bit of a deadline, but I am hoping as soon as these are done and caught up, I can get back to working on this t-shirt and maybe get a little bit of wear out of it this fall before it starts getting like really cold. But in reality, I wear t-shirts year round. I sometimes get very warm and need to just have my arms out. So yes. Okay. Before I get into my next two works in progress, I did want to give a little background on both of them. So they are both test knits, which is why I need to prioritize them to make sure I get them done by the end of the test knit. And this is my first time ever doing any sort of test knitting. So if you're unfamiliar, test knitting is when a designer has designed and written up a pattern, and before they release it, publish it, they have a group of people try out the pattern. They test knit it. And that's just to see, you know, are the directions clear? Do the numbers check out? And just making sure that you can take this pattern and produce a, you know, finished object from that set of directions. So it is the first time I've ever done it. I have really enjoyed it so far. However, the thing I will say is I just kind of decided on a whim, like, you know, I've been thinking about trying test knitting for a while. I'm just gonna apply to a few and see what happens. So it just so happened that there were two sweaters that I really liked. And so I applied to test knit both of them, and I thought I would not be selected for either of them. And I was selected for both of them. And they are running concurrently. They started on the same day. One is an 8-week test knit, one is a 9-week test knit. So I basically committed myself to knitting 2 full-size sweaters in 2 months, which is a lot for me. I got a little stressed out when I realized, when like the reality of what I had committed myself to really settled in. But I have a schedule. So far I've been sticking to it. Yes, I am a little concerned that I'm not gonna hit my goal for today. But yes, I am gonna do my absolute darndest to finish these sweaters on time, because the designers are counting on me. I do want to say, going forward, I'm gonna have, I mean, these definitely like meet my criteria, but I'm gonna, you know, be very mindful about what test knits I do. So yeah, I wanted to talk about that a little bit. I only want to test knit patterns that I'm like really interested in. I don't want to test knit for the sake of test knitting, if that makes sense. Both of these sweaters are sweaters that I would have purchased the pattern for and knit just regularly. And so that's kind of criteria number 1 when going into a test knit, because I do plan on doing more. Like I said, I'm enjoying the process. I really enjoy chatting with the other testers, you know, talking about yarn choices and, you know, fit and all that stuff. I've come across some really, really great people working through these test knits. So anyways, it has to be something that I would have knit anyways. And then my second criteria, kind of my personal thing that I am doing, is I've mentioned many times that I have a huge yarn stash. I'm trying to work through it. So I do not want to purchase any yarn for test knits. I only want to do test knits that I have the perfect yarn for already in my stash. I don't want to accumulate more for the purposes of doing a test knit. And so these 2 sweaters also fell into that bucket. I saw the pattern, kind of looked at the yarn weight and yardage requirements, and was like, I have the perfect yarn in my stash to knit that. So yeah, I think that's something I'm gonna do moving forward. Again, I don't need any more yarn. I want lots more yarn, but I don't need any more. And so, you know, at least for test knitting, I think if I think I probably have yarn for most types of sweaters that come out into the world, but if for some reason I don't, I think I would bypass that particular test knit because I just don't want to buy more yarn at the moment. So that's kind of going to be my criteria moving forward when I'm thinking about whether or not I want to sign up for a test knit. And then obviously, can I get it done by the deadline? I think this time I may have bitten off more than I can chew. I've kind of overcommitted myself. I'm optimistic that I will get them finished, but will I ever do 2 at a time again? Probably not. This was kind of a silly decision on my part. Yes, especially considering our trip to France in a couple weeks. I am not going to take these sweaters with us or with me. We're not planning on checking any luggage, and so fitting a full-size sweater into my carry-on feels like not a responsible travel choice. So I'm gonna have to pack some different knitting, but I'm not gonna take the sweaters, and so I'm also kind of losing a week when we go on our trip because I'm not gonna be able to work on our sweaters or work on these sweaters. I keep getting my like ours and mine and us's mixed up. Again, super frazzled. So anyways, that was a really long-winded explanation about test knitting and my decisions around it. So I will actually show you the sweaters now. All right, my first test knit is called the Double Date Sweater. This is a pattern by Joey of Winter's Weather Knits. And this is the one I've worked on the most over the last few weeks. It's the one, so I mentioned one of these has an 8-week deadline and one has a 9-week. This is the 8-week deadline one, so I've just been trying to get a little bit more of a head start on it since it has a week less than the other. But here it is so far. So this is a bottom-up sweater, if you can't tell. I am maybe 8 to 10 rows away from splitting for the sleeves. And then, you know, we'll knit the front and back separately, you know, do a collar, do the sleeves. And yes, this kind of striping pattern will continue throughout the entirety of the sweater. So let me start with the yarn I am using. So I am using Brooklyn Tweed Arbor. This is a DK weight yarn. This is blowing out quite a bit. So Brooklyn Tweed Arbor and DK weight, it is, where did that go? 100% American Targhee wool. This, if you are familiar with Brooklyn Tweed, I feel like they have a bit of a reputation for like breaking easily. So Brooklyn Tweed actually has 2 types of yarn. They have different weights of each of the type. They do have a woolen spun and a worsted spun version of their yarns in their line. I forget which one is which. Worsted spun. So Arbor is worsted spun, and because it's worsted spun, it's a little stronger. So if you've been interested in trying Brooklyn Tweed, but you've heard that the yarn breaks pretty easily, I would maybe give this a try. It's a lot stronger than their woolen spun yarn. So the woolen spun is the Loft and Shelter, and then the worsted spun is the Arbor and the Puri, I believe. I like all of Brooklyn Tweed yarn a lot. Even the one that breaks kind of easily, I think it's really special yarn. But yes, if you're concerned about breakage but want to try woolen tweed, I would maybe give Arbor a try. So anyways, this is the colorway Hammock, and you know, that is obviously my main color that I'm carrying throughout the whole sweater. And I have 3 contrast colors. The first one is Carob, I believe is how you say it, and I think this color is discontinued. It's brown. It's not my favorite color in the whole world. Again, I had it in my stash. I thought cohesively it went really well with, you know, the whole color palette of the sweater, but I do think generally I don't really like this color very much, if I'm being completely honest. I really like browns, however, this one's just kind of flat. I don't know, but it's discontinued anyway, so I don't think you can get it anymore, but that's Carob. And then my other two colors are Arabesque, which these are all blowing up quite a bit. Arabesque is a kind of mid-toned tan that is kind of like pink leaning. It's much darker in real life than it is showing up on the camera. If I pull it back, like this, I think is much more accurate, color accurate than this. Once it comes into the sunlight, it really blows out. But yes, I think this is more color accurate. And then I've also got my third color, which is Degas. And again, it's a little bit darker in real life than it's showing up on camera. And you know, even side by side, I think these look pretty similar on camera, but they are quite different in real life. And holding them back, I think you can see the difference there. So anyways, yeah, I think holding up the sweater and looking at the whole thing, you can kind of see the difference between all of those three colors, especially these two, the Arabesque and Degas. But yes, I am knitting the size, again, why can't I remember? I think it's the size 6. I don't remember the number size. This, I believe the finished sweater measurements are 52 inches. So again, I have a 45-inch bust, so this is gonna end up giving me about 7 inches of positive ease, which is perfect. And then, yeah, I don't wanna like give anything away, but the thing I really, really like about this sweater pattern is the stripes look like color work, but it is not stranded color work. It's a really simple technique. Again, I don't wanna give it away because this will end up being a paid for pattern, but this is not color work. So if you really like this sweater but are a bit intimidated by color work, there's no need to worry with this one. So yes, I have decided, so I've mentioned before, I typically lengthen sweaters. I think this sweater is meant to be a little bit more oversized, a little bit longer. Because I'm tall, it's not going to be that way on me. I debated lengthening it, and for the purposes of the test knit, I'm definitely able to lengthen it. I just have to keep track of how much extra yarn I use to lengthen it. However, I'm a little worried about the deadline and, you know, the time it would take to lengthen it, the extra time. So I'm gonna knit this one completely to pattern. I do think it's gonna be a little more cropped on me. Based on the measurements so far, I think, you know, if I wear high-waisted jeans, it'll probably hit just below the top of my jeans, which is a style I really like. It's just maybe not the intended style of this sweater. But yes, I'm finding this really enjoyable. I'm excited to get to the sleeve separation because then the front and back will get worked separately and it will feel like it's going a lot faster than it is currently. It's kind of nice. I really like bottom-up sweaters because you get the body of the sweater done first, and to me that's always like the least interesting part of a sweater. Yeah, I might have an unpopular opinion here, but I prefer knitting sleeves over knitting the body of a sweater just because they go so quickly, and the body, you know, it's a big tube. And it's just this huge swath of fabric, and yes. But I'm almost done, and I like getting it out of the way. I really enjoy bottom-up sweaters for that reason. But yes, that is once again the double date sweater by Winter's Weather Knits. And yes, I'm really enjoying this neutral color palette I've put together. I think I'm gonna definitely get a lot of wear out of this one. So I think that is all I have to say about this one. My next work in progress is my second test knit. And this pattern is one that I have had my eyes on for a while. I am a really big fan of the Crea podcast with Rebecca. If you have not seen her podcast, I definitely recommend you go watch it. But recently, Rebecca has written up her very first pattern. And she has been working on her sample for several months, and she's been showing it on her podcast, and I have just had major hard eyes for this sweater since she started showing it. And so when she put out her call for testers, I knew that I really wanted to apply. So this is what I have so far. This is the Cargill sweater, and again, it's by Rebecca of the Crea podcast, and yeah, this is maybe the most like luxurious, stunning thing I've ever knit. So the pattern is a top-down raglan, and it has this all over. Rebecca calls this a dip stitch. And yes, those dip stitches just kind of, come together to form this like vertical design all over the sweater. I've knit a couple other sweaters with like kind of a vertical stitch pattern. I'm a big fan. And so yeah, maybe that was like part of the reason I was so drawn to this, is I just love straight lines. Anyways, so I am like maybe about halfway done with the raglan increases. I'm more than halfway done with the increases, but obviously the rows are getting longer every round. There will be a folded over collar added a little bit later, and then as I mentioned, the stitch pattern will continue throughout the entirety of the sweater. So the yarn I am using, so I'm holding two yarns held double. The first one is, well, they are both Emilia and Philomene. And this is the Josephine base in the Tiffany colorway. So Josephine is their 100% wool. So this is a French company, and their label is entirely in French. So it says, I wonder if you're going to be able to read this. It's not focusing, but it says 100% Merinos non-traits. My French is really bad, which is really unfortunate because I'm going to France in a few weeks. But I'll put it on the screen here. I Google translated that and it said non-treated. So I'm assuming that this is not a superwash wool. I think it's a non-superwash 100% wool. If you speak French out there, which I think some of you do because you've helped me learn how to pronounce some things, but I would love to know if I am correct in assuming that this is not a superwash wool. But yes, anyways, this is their Josephine base in the Tiffany colorway, and I am holding that double in the same colorway. So once again, Tiffany, Emilia, and Philomene in the Leona base, which is 72% mohair, 28% silk. And I've had this yarn in my stash for a while, and it's like one of my more precious sweater quantities. It's hand-dyed. It's this beautiful burgundy color. It's blowing out a little on the screen. I do think it's like darker in real life. This is maybe more accurate, but it's just this like perfect like chocolate raspberry color. You know, is it brown? Is it purple? No one knows. It's absolutely stunning. And I've had this in my stash for a couple of years, and I think this is the perfect project for it because I don't know, there's just something about this pattern. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it just feels so fancy to me. So yeah, that's the Cargill sweater. I really enjoy knitting on it. The dip stitch is really fun. It's a 4-row repeat, so it's easy to memorize, and yeah, I just think it looks so elegant, and yeah, I could stare at it all day. I really, really like it. I am knitting the size 6, which once again is completely meaningless without an actual bust circumference. I'm gonna be better prepared next episode and actually come at you with some real measurements of the sizes of these sweaters. But anyways, yeah, I think both. So again, the double date sweater, the test knit ends mid-September, and then the Cargill test knit ends the 3rd week in September, I believe. And then I don't know quite what goes into finalizing the pattern and publishing it, but if you're interested in either of these 2 sweaters, I would assume that they would come out, you know, late September, early October, or somewhere around then, based on when we're expected to have our test knits done. So yes, absolutely loving working on these. I do wish I hadn't, you know, committed myself to so much, but I'm gonna be working really hard over the next several weeks to try and get some really good progress done on both of these sweaters, and I'm excited to show you how they progress. My last work in progress today is a sewing project. So I've mentioned the last few episodes that my sewing machine was not working super well, and that I had taken it in to get serviced. And I think since last episode, it was done and ready to come home, and they did find a couple issues with it that they were able to fix, and now my sewing machine is running so smoothly. I kind of like got it back and played around with it a bit, and I was like, is this my sewing machine? Because it's night and day. You should definitely be getting your sewing machine cleaned professionally once a year, but if you're having any sort of issues, go get it serviced. It will solve all of your problems. I was like in complete shock and awe over how much better my sewing machine was working. I guess that's their job. That's what they do professionally, but I was just like still surprised nonetheless. So I started a new sewing project. I mentioned this a bit in my last episode, and I worked on it a bit and then got a bit sidetracked by the test knits. I really want to finish this before we go on our trip to France because I need some nicer outfits. We have some reservations at some pretty swanky restaurants. Dan and I really like to splurge on fine dining when we go on vacation. It's like something we're both really into. But yeah, I need some clothes to wear. And so I'm hoping to get this done before we go. But I mentioned this last episode. Here's where I'm at. I am making another version of the Reglisse dress by Deer and Doe. I sewed this dress a couple weeks ago in a green viscose for a friend's wedding, and I really like the fit of this pattern, and so I am making it again in a light blue chambray cotton. And here's where I'm at. I've, sewed the front and back together. I did the gathering on the shoulder, and now I am ready to do the neck facing and the neck binding. Overall, like, all of my fabric is cut out. The sewing part, this dress comes together very quickly. I think if I sat down with it for like an hour or two, I could finish it up. So I think I can definitely find the time to finish it before we leave. Again, I've got about, we'll say 2.5 weeks at this point. The other really fun thing about this project is I mentioned last episode that Dan bought me a serger for my birthday, and I have got to play around with my serger and serge some of the edges on this, and it just looks so neat and tidy and clean, and I love that. Here's the inside of my shoulder. A little tip, I guess I can talk about this. So a lot of sewing patterns have, this is called a shoulder yoke. And it's this piece of rectangular fabric. I see this, or again, I am a very new garment sewer, so I might watch this in several years and laugh, ha ha ha, what a novice I was back then. But anyways, I have seen this technique on a couple different patterns, specifically when there's ruching. So yeah, I've sewn 2 or 3 dress patterns that have ruching at the shoulder like this, and it always kind of goes into this rectangular piece. Yes, so what I do, and this is not in the pattern, but I saw this on a YouTube video and thought it was a really good idea, is I always cut 2 of those shoulder yoke pieces, and then I end up sandwiching the ruched bit in between those pieces. I don't know if you can see that. But yeah, I don't like the idea of having like all that extra fabric hanging out. And also, if you have a serger, serging a ruched fabric, I haven't tried it, but it does seem like it could be a little bulky. And yeah, French seaming a ruched fabric is really weird. So basically, like, all of your options to kind of finish off that edge get a little tricky because, the ruching creates this kind of bulky bunch of fabric. But with this, I've heard this called the like sandwich method or the burrito method, but you take 2 of those yoke pieces and kind of end up sandwiching the ruching in between them. And then obviously these edges will get finished and you will have a nice clean ruche section. And then, the other 2 sides of the shoulder yoke, I just serged with the back. And I think that technique works really nice if you've got any sort of ruched edge. How many times can I say the word ruched? Can turn it into a drinking game. So anyways, I'm gonna try, over the next couple weeks, just here and there, try to do a little sewing and finish up this dress so that I can take it with us on our trip, because I think, it's breezy, it's summery, it's fancy, it's nice, and I want to wear it in France. So yes. And that is everything from me today. I feel like this is going to be a long video. We will see as I get to editing, but I did have a lot to show you today, so longer video. But yes, I will plan on recording again in about 2 weeks. So I hope you have a lovely few weeks until I speak to you next. If you've made it this far and you haven't already, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel if you are interested in seeing more. Leave a comment if you are so inclined. I really enjoy hearing from you all. So have a wonderful 2 weeks until I speak to you next, and happy knitting, happy sewing. Bye everyone.